Hey guys, what's up? Misha from GGD here, and today we're going to be talking about the benefits of triggers. Now, in some circles, triggers are a bit of a taboo, but let's forget all that because actually there's some very valuable uses in certain contexts. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I use them to benefit the mix.
All right, guys, let's just jump right in. So I've got here a little demo of an old idea called Foof. And let's listen to it real quick. All right, you get the idea. That sounds pretty powerful. The drums sound pretty good. And this has the trigger samples blended in here. You can see kick trig right here, the low blow sample, and it's up pretty high, and the snare trigger sample, the mid punch sample right there. So I wanted to just start off so you see a case where I'm actually using it. So now let's go ahead and just mute these for a second. That still sounds good. It just doesn't sound as in-your-face and huge. Now, this is where you need to make a decision. You see, when we set out to make these libraries, we wanted to make them as realistic as possible. So ideally, if you take a lot of care, you can make these sound like they're real drums in a mix, and you can have control over the consistency. It's almost like a very consistent drummer is playing it. However, there will still be variation because that's just the nature of how a drummer plays. And there is this movement with rock and metal music where one-shot samples are being blended in to get, this sheer power. It's not necessarily realistic, but it's just trying to get a certain size out of the mix. And given that this is a sort of metal library, we figured that we would offer that option, and you don't have to use it. But I kind of wanted to cover how you might use this and the benefits of using this, because I think triggers can be kind of a dirty word, and layering with samples can be something that can be misconstrued as a bad thing. So I want to show a context where it's actually very useful and show you a few little tricks on how you can use these to enhance your sound a little bit. So let's take a look at the kick, for example. Let's solo this for a sec. Let's just get the drums going. So that's the sum channel. That's the basic one you have. You have the sub as well, which is just, sort of a little bit of that sub going on. You can mix it in how you like. This is a pretty realistic kick sound. It's got variation. It's like we even have it alternating between left and right. That's the way I have it set. It makes it sound pretty good. This is the trigger. Now you may notice that sounds not great on its own, and that's kind of normal. That is actually the nature of these one-shot triggers. They're not there to sound good. You don't want that to be the only part of your sound. However, layered together, it's got this aspect that gives it this consistency. Where if we listen to this, and see, now the kick doesn't sound fake or bad or anything like that. Of course, if you were to mute out the real kick, very clicky and weird. But what I was doing here was sort of, I chose this sample because I thought it was blending well. And this is, again, using this specific kick, which trigger do you want? So let's change it. Let's change it to Hulk Smash. And let's blend that in. And this is the stuff that you can play around with. This is how I came up with the kick sound that I wanted. And let us unmute everything so we hear it in context. So right now, using the same kick sample, we have something that's a little bit beefier, and that's kind of cool. So maybe you prefer that. And we've included a few different, these are all fundamentally different, so that you have a few options. Let's try dead knock. You can hear what it's doing there. You just kind of blend that to your liking. It's the same thing on, you know what? I kind of like the Hulk smash, so why don't we change back to that? Nice and beefy, right? The snare is really interesting because you can do something completely different, but it's the same idea. So let's listen to just the snare here. That's just the sample right there, right? These are the natural sounds all together. So you notice that this is fundamentally a very different pitch. It's much lower, right? Now, because we have this time aligned, and to those of you who do mess with samples on your own time, you know how this could be a pain with phase and aligning and all that. You don't need to worry with this. It's going to trigger exactly. So that's one less thing to worry about, which is why it's great to have it built in. But you can basically blend these sounds, and you might be saying, okay, well, you know, is it okay to have a sort of mid-tune snare with a low-tune sample? Absolutely. You'll hear this on certain albums. In fact, I don't know for sure, but take Way of All Flesh by Gojira. I'm pretty sure that is a pretty lower snare, like a lower tune snare with like a pretty high tune sample, or maybe the other way around, but I can tell that there's sort of two drums going at once, and that's kind of a cool effect. So you can play around with this. So let's take a look at some of these other samples here, right? Hefty slap, right? I mean, that sounds pretty trash on its own, but in context, it's kind of a cool effect. And you want to just blend it in. So this is the way I would do it. I wouldn't just crank it. That sounds a bit weird, right? But what you could do is just blend it in. And you hear it's sort of giving the snare a lot of body. And it doesn't matter that it's a one shot, because you're sort of hearing the realism of the real snare, but you're just hearing this extra body from the sample. And because we have all these snares and all these samples, you can just try all sorts of combinations. You know, we've got this pretty high tuned snare. Or let's go even higher tune. Let's try there we go, really cranking it. This is one of my favorite snares that we captured, and it's really just cranking, but the nature of that, it's not going to have a lot of body. So let's see if we can add some more body using samples. You hear that? Now there's this weight to the snare that wasn't really there, and it doesn't really sound like there's a one shot behind it. So try a different sample. Let's see how we can get this sound different. So that's what that one shot sounds like. I quite like that. And for reference, if you are processing this, you know, I am still summing this to the same bus, so this is going through the same processing that my snare drum's going through. You can opt to do that or not to do that. I like it because it's sort of treating it like it's one big snare sound there. But now we have something fundamentally different for where we started, even though it's the same idea, just by swapping out some snare trigger samples, or even, you know, the snare itself, or whatever combination you're using. So I hope that this is enlightening, and hopefully take some of the stigma out of using one-shot samples. This is also why we want to include this, is because we think this is really valuable, especially when you're dealing with metal and rock mixes that you really want to be powerful. This is an indispensable tool, and if you don't like it, you just don't have to use it. Just turn it off. It's not there. You know, we still have our relatively natural mix like that. So yeah, thanks so much for watching, guys.